Welcome to Nonprofit Thrive, a podcast where we learn from the humans who are helping nonprofits succeed in the digital world. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, and welcome to Nonprofit Thrive, where we share the stories of leaders in the nonprofit space. I'm talking about the underappreciated folks who've given their lives to not just the pursuit of profit, but also to their desire to change the world for the better, and the stories of people who help them do it, the designers, the coders, etc. And along the way, we're also learning about this ecosystem and about the people and the tools and the ideas and the strategies, and how to stay sane while we do it. Examples of other episodes that we've recorded: listen to a show we recently did with Molly Garone of the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. She manages communications for the Choices Project, which is a program there that does research and advocacy to address childhood obesity. She talked about how she does that, including how she runs a community of practitioners and shares ideas about how to get work done. Or listen to the show we did with Eric Brown of Brownbridge Strategies, who is responsible for today's guest. He introduced me to today's guest, where we talked about his history in Hollywood and in DC, and as a communication specialist for foundations and nonprofits. Fascinating episode. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. We usually talk about digital technology, but today we're going to talk about that and not only the digital space, but the physical space. And really excited to bring on today's guest. Before I do that, though, I do need to read our sponsor message. Our episode, in fact, all of our episodes are sponsored by BFC Digital. That is, surprise, surprise, my company, where we help nonprofits thrive on the web. If you work at a nonprofit or a foundation or another type of social change organization, I'm sure you're aware that unless you're doing a big old chunky project, tens of thousands of dollars, it can be difficult to find a reputable, kind, responsive help for your website. That is what we do at BFC Digital. We help our clients succeed on the web by being the web colleagues you wish you had at your own organization, sitting right next to you, that you could tap on the shoulder and ask, why isn't this working? We can fix bugs. We can help you evolve your web presence. We can design new campaign pages. We can integrate that new fancy donation system that your fundraiser is so excited about onto your site. And we do it all without ever asking you to fill out a dreaded support ticket, because support tickets are the worst. Every time you fill out a support ticket, some angel loses its wings. Go to bfcdigital.com to learn more. So today, very excited to have on the show Francis Court of WONDERSPHERE. He is a veteran of architecture, of web design, has done work for foundations, nonprofits, and recently did a redesign of an office space for one of his clients. And one of the things I want to talk to him about is modern office design. So many of us are thinking about, how are we going to manage the world post-COVID? Are we going to have remote work? Are we going to have in-person work? And if you have in-person work or hybrid work, how can we design the office space, the physical space, to communicate what we want it to communicate and to effectuate working together with our colleagues the best way possible? A little bit of history on Francis. He is the CEO of WONDERSPHERE, which is a branding, design, and communications agency based in London and Chicago. He worked as an architect. He's traveled extensively in the USA, Asia Pacific, Middle East, Hong Kong, Dubai. He's done multidisciplinary branding projects across all kinds of sectors, including nonprofits. Francis, thank you so much for joining us.
Ben, thank you. What an introduction. Really happy to be talking to you today.
I could only get through 5% of the introduction I wanted. But Francis, I want to talk about this office space thing. But before, what we try and do on the show is just get a little bit of an intro into you, who you are, and how you got to where you are today. So can you tell us what you wanted to do as a kid? I assume you grew up in the UK.
Actually, I grew up in South Africa, so I went to school in South Africa and university in Cape Town. And I'd always wanted to be an artist or involved with art or creativity in some way. Was never really sure what to do. And so when I finished school, I started an architecture degree at the University of Cape Town, which was great, a fantastic education. And I carried on. I moved to the UK, finished the degree, and did the second degree, which makes up the architecture degree in the UK, and went for my first job at the tender age of 28, and was very surprised at the opportunities that were available for architects and what I would be doing. And it seemed I was slightly disillusioned, having grafted my way through two degrees.
Disillusioned,
so
why?
Just I hadn't imagined that I would be have studied for this long, and that my first job would be to detail the bathroom fixtures in an office block. I imagined I would be doing something much more glamorous, much more engaging, much more meaningful, actually. And right. I guess, like everything, I ended up, by coincidence, working for an agency that looked after Ford Motor Company and all of their global design work, and that was insanely fulfilling to be involved in that, because not only were you involved in design, but you were seeing design having effect and making and having an immediate effect in the work that we're doing. I traveled a lot with work, which again I think is a great sort of eye opener in terms of understanding different cultures and the way people approach the same problem creatively in different parts of the world and in different cultures. And I loved the whole experience, and it probably set the tone for everything that followed, because it's that sense of curiosity, that sense of wanting to be understand how the world works, to be involved in using design as a force for good, to change organizations, to change businesses, to change the way people think. And I was hooked. So after that, there was no chance of ever designing a bathroom fixture or it was always going to be something different each time. And that's what I love about the work that we do, is just that variety, the variety of the diet that we have is what makes the work that we do so interesting and inspiring.
So were you were doing architecture work? How did you end up doing like sort of web design stuff? Did you do that through the Ford Motor Company thing as well, or was that sort of separate from that?
So within those sort of the creative world, you start off as a specialist 3D designer, and then as you work through that, you start to work with different disciplines. So there's bits of filmmaking, and then there's bits of web, and there's graphic design work, there's print work, there's live events, and so slowly you start to understand this what I would call this joined up world of, or this toolbox of being able to communicate. So the agency I was with for until 2006 was effectively the only employer I've ever had. They were very what they would call media neutral, and I guess that's a bit of a buzzword, and everyone will talk about it now. But they would always approach the client's problem or the design brief without the solution in mind. It might be a website, it could be a live event, it could be a print campaign, it could be a film, it could be a TV commercial, and that type of thinking really resonated. And I think that's probably the way we still like to think about work for our clients. We never try to fit it into a particular solution, but rather understand what it is they're trying to achieve, and then come at it from a very different point of view.
Yeah, I actually heard you. I don't know if I'm giving something away here, but I heard you on a different podcast, and it was Eric Brown's podcast, and you were talking about your work with Spencer. And I remember the Spencer Foundation woman, whose name escapes me, but seemed very nice, said that they wanted to they were working on a new website. They wanted to hire an agency to do the new website, and they had interviewed a bunch of people, and then you came in and connected with them about the problem and stuff. And she said that you guys went away and then you sent them like a video. Do you know what I mean? Like you sent them like a montage video. And we do website projects too. I've never thought about sending someone a video after the initial meeting, because we're just a website company. That's what we do. So, but I thought that was so interesting because you are clearly thinking about design, not about design globally, and not just about the website. But is that something you commonly will do?
I think so. I'll do a quick plug for my wonderful clients at Spencer. So Emily Crone Phillips,
Yes.
who's the marketing communications manager, and Liz Carrick, who's the chief of staff, and they've been an amazing client because exactly as you suggesting that first introduction to them, they've always given us so much latitude to tackle a problem without defining it in a box, and that's been really helpful. I think when we first got asked to do the website for Spencer, it was clear to us that this was an organization with an amazingly rich story. Going back 50 years, the story of Lyle Spencer, what he achieved in his life, and the legacy that he left. And it seemed to me, like a lot of foundations, that they were lost in corporate world and I think that the reason that we did that video was we felt that it was important. Spencer always spoke about building communities, and building communities is not something that you do with I'm trying to think of the right words, but with dry facts. Building communities is about building connections. It's about emotionalizing what it is that they do. And so the film that we produced was just to show them what Spencer would look like as an organization that they knew and were very familiar with. But when you started to think about it through a different lens and you emotionalized the way that the work that they were doing and the impact of the work and how many lives it had changed over a long period of time. So that was the way that we approached it, was just to try and set the tone for a different way of talking. Spencer at that stage, I guess, like many foundations, were trapped in their name, as it were, Spencer Foundation, and people weren't calling them Spencer Foundation; they were calling them Spencer, and that was something that concerned them. And I think part of the work that we did was to just say to them, look, you're Spencer. It's okay to be Spencer. It's fine. The foundation could be your surname. But it allowed them to just relax a little bit and talk about the work that they did and how they engaged with people and how they build communities in a much more relaxed way, in a much more conversational way, rather than through this wall of a website that put up these barriers and said you have to be formal and you have to do it this way and you have to do it that way. So I think that was the approach with Spencer initially.
It's funny. I think we're kind of lucky in a way when we work for nonprofits or foundations too, because the stories can be so good, right? It's not like I'm trying to sell shoes and the story is like, oh, you will dunk a basketball or whatever. Like the stories that they have are like, man, this homeless kid was it's so great. So, and I noticed that you guys try, and that was something that she said too, is that you guys talk stories a lot.
I think so. It's part of what we do, and I think when you think about organizations with a lot of history and a legacy, it's hard for them to let go of anything. They hold on to everything, and so for us, I think the task is easy because part of what we do is to just reduce, to simplify, to say, that is important, but it's not important to this audience, or that's important to remember, but now's not the time to talk about it. And so I think in that sense, just helping organizations to simplify, to rationalize, to focus on who they're talking to rather than what they would like to talk about, which is a big distinction, is the way that we approach Spencer and other clients as well.
I think you're totally right. I mean, one of the things when we're doing website projects, the first thing we're trying to do is identify who's the audience and what do they want.
Right.
Not what is the organization about, which is a different thing. I mean, the organization thinks it knows what it's about, which they probably do, but but it's not like they are the ones going to the website. You know what I mean? Like the people that are going to the website are a different set of people, you know, and they are looking for something, they need something. So I think you're right, especially with, that's interesting what you say about organizations with long histories. They have so much they want to hang on to and impart and communicate that might be separate from what the audience needs.
I think so, and I think it's quite liberating, and I imagine that that perhaps we get it slightly wrong. Well, I know we get it slightly wrong, but the most important thing is to reduce down and try and hit the right audience with the right messaging. And I think for Spencer, or most of the clients that are grant making, the majority of visitors to the website are interested in the grants. It just that just makes sense. And so anything that doesn't make that process of accessing the grants as easy and as simple as possible is just a barrier, really.
Yeah, right. And that is audience number one. We've also found that, like, for foundations particularly, or nonprofits that are giving grants, audience number two is often a very small percentage of people who they want to partner with them to give them money.
Yes.
You know, they want funding from larger foundations or larger organizations. So that's sort of audience number two. The numbers on that are going to be tiny, but the importance of each number is going to be high. So you want to make sure that whatever you're doing, you know, speaks to those people as well. At least the level of sophistication, for instance, that with which you're doing these things is reflected for those folks, so that they don't think that the money that they're giving is going to be wasted.
Exactly. No, that makes perfect sense. Yes.
Interesting. So can you talk a little bit, because I do want to get into the office thing. So you had a web design project with Spencer. You did that project, and can you talk about how did that end up being also an office space redesign?
I'm going to have to try and remember the sequence of events. What I remember about doing the website with Spencer, and I really laughed during your introduction, because you know, your comments about tickets and making things simple and easy and accessible for clients. I guess because we traditionally haven't been a website agency, I always found as an outsider that it was such an impenetrable world of jargon and so frustrating. I mean, it's so frustrating for clients. And when we started doing websites, and Spencer was probably one of the early websites that we did, I was determined, whatever it took, we were going to have fun and we were going to make it enjoyable. And we were lucky enough that Eric Brown was, Emily was on, had just started in Spencer, and she was going on maternity leave. And so she said, well, look, I'll be back in 6 months, and can you finish the website by then? Which was the best brief we could have ever had. But Eric actually kept the us kids in check and made sure that we did everything that we said we would, and didn't wander off and start, you know, playing with things we weren't meant to. But I remember Eric did come back at the end of that project, and whether I have it on an email or somewhere, and he just said, "Thank you for making that fun." And that for me was, you know, was the end of that project. Was this, that it was fun, it was enjoyable. It's meant to.
That
be
is awesome.
It's meant to be enjoyable. Like doing websites, thinking, you know, telling the story of an organization and bringing out their personality should be fun. Why should it be painful? Why on earth should it be painful?
Right. I mean, we think that all the time, that is kind of our raison d'etre as well, is to make the website, but then also, as we're doing support for websites, people should be excited to have a site that they can use to do cool shit. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, I'm allowed to swear on this podcast, apparently. But right, like, you have this great website, and let's say you're starting a new campaign or a new program, or you have a subset of donors you want to appeal to. You should be excited to fire up a new landing page, to put the designs on there, and it should work, and it should be cool. And I'm sure you're going to struggle with part of it. So call us and we'll help you, and it'll be fun. But that is not people's thought process when they get into websites. They're immediately frustrated. Things are hard. the developer they're going to talk to is not going to want to talk to them. They're not going to get back to them, first off. And then when they do, it's going to be frustrating. And if you say something doesn't look right, they're going to try and convince you that actually it does when you know it doesn't. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's a hugely frustrating experience. We're really trying to change that and just be friendly, normal people, which I think you totally get too, because we've all had this experience of dealing with crappy developers that are frustrating.
And most other things, I spent a lot of time in the States. Most other things just are so customer friendly and usable. And there was this thing called website building that people, every time you mention it to someone, you'd see their faces, they would drop as if this was this awful experience. But anyway, Ben, your question was, how did we go from that? How did we go from doing the websites?
Yes.
I think that perhaps because of the website work, Spencer had other projects around the website, printed work, other branded work. And they said to us, could you have a look at this? So we started working with them. And I think we were very fortunate to agree an ongoing retainer relationship with them, to support them with branding, marketing, communications, design, creativity. It was quite a broad brief that we had to sort of slot into their organization. As I see it, at least, I feel like I feel like I work there in many ways. Get under the skin, understand them, and help them to do whatever they needed to do in terms of putting the message across about what Spencer was and their mission to fund education, research, and so we were lucky. And just prior to that awful COVID conversation, Spencer had started talking about moving out of their current facility on Michigan Avenue.
Okay.
And the lease was coming up, and they were thinking about it. And of course, Spencer went to architects as they would, and they went to, and they ran a tender. And I think I started making a few noises with Spencer, advocating that we would, could we get involved? And it took a while. It took COVID to come, and Spencer, I think, were at a point where they were a little bit frustrated with the process of the design process. And I think Liz came to me and expressed some frustrations that the layouts weren't the way they wanted them. And so that was just the opportunity. That was like someone just opened the door a little bit for us to get involved. And obviously personally, my background is architecture. We've done a lot of experiential design. And I think, generally in branding terms, I think environment spaces, unless you're retailing and you're talking about a shop environment, are neglected in the overall conversation. So for us, the way that we went to Spencer with this was to say, Spencer's all about facilitating community.
Yes.
What does your office do in terms of facilitating community? What is it that it does well? And I think the answer to that was probably quite a short list, that it didn't facilitate community in the way they spoke about. So it was the opportunity for us to take the floor plan. The building was pretty traditional, American office block, big core in the middle of the building. And then it's on the 16th floor, so it had amazing views and cubicles around the outside. But it didn't function in my mind as a hub for an organization with soul. The middle of the building was completely dead. It's where you arrived. There was lifts and services. And the first thing that we did was almost turn the building the other way around. So open up the inside so that the Spencer had a heart and a soul. It had a central focus. And that was an important thing to do. I think from using 3D design to make the organization feel like there was a central point of sort of shared hub. Huh. The other thing that we did, sorry.
Oh no, I would just to ask you about that. So, do you mean like the floor is kind of a square, and you're talking about the center of that area?
Correct. So yeah, so the way a modern building like that would work is obviously the prime in the olden days, the prime real estate was the corner offices and all the offices that had to have great views. And of course they're on Michigan Avenue and they're fantastic views from the building. And the center is just the lifts and the services and the bathrooms and the storerooms and all of the facilities that an office like that would require.
I see. So
it's dead. It's completely dead, right? There's nothing happening there.
I see. So the way you would navigate, like you would go around the edges really to see people, meet people, whatever, and then the middle part is like you go to the bathroom there.
Yeah. I always said to Spencer, in your office, because it's a circular loop. If everyone walks in the same direction, you may spend the whole day and never bump into any of your colleagues because it just seemed like such a strange layout. And the other thing, of course, with it was that it had a clear head to the head and body to the organization. So all the meeting rooms and the kitchen and the senior members of staff were all in one area, and it sort of gave that side of the building all of the energy, and the rest of it was. And so we sort of decentralized that and tried to spread that function so that it didn't feel as if there was one really active part of the building and then one side of the building that felt just a bit quieter and a bit more less relevant.
So you walk now you walk, and I assume you get in off the elevators, which is sort of in the middle.
Correct.
So you walk in and you see what, like?
So it's what we would describe, or we spoke to Spencer about, as this stage for communal storytelling. So it was the opportunity to feature some of the work that the organization, the current work that they were doing. It was the opportunity to create seating areas where people would actually want to stay and actually do a quick meeting. It was the opportunity to put out all of their publications. It was the opportunity to tell the history of Spencer, and why the work that they do matters and how it's relevant. And so it became much more of a central hub, and all of that was designed to be simply interchangeable. So the story is obviously changing. It's not a museum to Spencer. So it has to be dynamic, and it has to be changing and evolving. Not that you get in the creative agency every time something changed, but how does somebody, a team member, pin up a notice and say, we're doing this initiative, or how do we make it so that it's a lot more accessible and it feels like a shared kind of storytelling space.
Right.
That was the approach with that.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. How do you feel? And obviously the big question here, when you're doing an office redesign, obviously is relevant, is are people going to the office or not, is kind of part of it as well. And and what are your thoughts on that? Are you thinking that it makes sense to have permanent offices for people? Are people kind of coming in hybrid and using the office space meeting area more, or hot desks, or what are your thoughts on all that?
That's a really good point, because if I know this has changed and there's a dynamic, but let's say staff are coming into the office 2.5 days a week.
Yeah,
that's 36% of the building, 36% of the 7-day week being used in an active way. So we would, I think this goes back to the way that I was trained as a designer. How do you make sure that the building is as efficient as it possibly can be? 36% return on usage is really low. And so part of what we tried to do was think about sweating the asset. How do we get it to work for longer, for harder? And one of the key things with Spencer is their convenings. They're about building community, and they organize a lot of meetings. They organize a lot of one-on-one meetings. They organize a lot of dinners. They organize a lot of private events. They organize a lot of events for 300 people. So we introduced the idea that they should do that all within their home. Why would you go and rent a venue in a hotel? Why would you go to a restaurant? Why wouldn't you do all of that within your facility? And so if we thought about the way that the space was divided and used we could accommodate all of those things within the building. So not only is it there's efficiencies in terms of use of the building, but also in terms of introducing and bringing people into the heart of Spencer, showing them what the organization was about, allowing them to engage with it more directly. That made a lot of sense. And so that's part of the solution that we came up was this ridiculous name called Flexibition, but this idea that there was this flexible space that would allow you to do all of those things.
That's amazing, because imagine having a dinner for, I don't know, donors or partners or something. You could do it at a fancy restaurant or even a non-fancy restaurant, but going to an Italian place down the street is not going to tell anyone who goes there what Spencer's all about. Doing it in their office, if it's a pleasant place, is going to help underline everything that you guys are going to be talking about already.
Right. And without compromising from a sort of practical point of view, if there's staff working or if there's, or that it feels like you're having dinner in the middle of an office, that's kind of weird as well. So it was about getting that balance right. And then just to deal with the other questions that you asked, I mean, we approached it by defining what it was that Spencer were looking to achieve with the office, but also what staff, if we were going to ask staff to leave the comfort of their homes and all of the, what was it that we were offering that was different, that made the environment, the Spencer office, better, or offered them something different. If it wasn't better, I don't think anything could be better than home. But what was it that we could facilitate that would make coming to the office an important part of the working week? And that has to go beyond just seeing other people. And so we started thinking about the creation of thinking about it more as a sort of a members club, a private members club. How do you create spaces that people can use in the same way you might use a members club if you travel a lot? And so that was an important part of it in terms of this idea of trying to build a home from home was the other point. So we deliberately steered away from anything corporate in terms of colors, in terms of fixtures, in terms of furniture, in terms of the sound within the space, that it shouldn't feel loud and echoey. It needed to feel a lot more intimate. So we worked on all of those things to try and make it somewhere that people wanted to go to, rather than somewhere where they had to go because they had to see other colleagues.
I like that a lot. Making it feel more like home, like having carpets or having plants, for instance, or whatever.
Well, you're right. I mean, that was the central part of the building that we spoke about. Again, I'm not sure our client particularly likes the names, although they seem to have stuck. But Infoasis, this idea that the sort of center of the building was this information hub. There was also an oasis, and so that has these green walls, walls and benches where you can, which just felt a bit more natural and kind of domestic in scale.
Totally.
So it was. I think it's a striking first arrival at Spencer. I think one of the best comments. I took it as a bit of a. I didn't take it very well. I heard one of the staff said something along the lines of, "It's just like the website." And
that's probably a compliment, but it sounds a bit weird.
And I was thinking, well, yeah, I kind of get it, but
that's really funny. Yeah, no, I did notice when I looked at pictures, greenery as well. Like we said, that is important, and even though I have a plant in the background, which is actually, if you watch the videos of the last couple episodes, it used to be much bigger, and it's really suffered. And so we're going the wrong direction in this house, at least when it comes to plants. But it is very, that can really make a difference to me.
So anyone who knows me, I'm an architectural purist because of my education. So before COVID, if anyone had asked me, I would have said no plants inside, no plants in interiors. They belong outside. You should look at them out through the window. They don't belong indoors. But that all changed. So there's some positive somewhere from the pandemic. I've changed my perspective entirely on plants.
Oh, is that right? Is that right? But why do you think that happened? What did the pandemic change about you wanting to see plants inside?
I don't know. It's a good point. It's interesting. I mean, our studio. I wouldn't allow plants in the studio, but if you saw it now, it's pretty much like a jungle. So I don't have a good answer, Ben. I'm going to have to think about that. What changed
I
my
think
mind?
Dude, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I feel like for me personally, it's getting older. You know what I mean? Like getting older. You see in New York City, you see this all the time. You see, like if you walk through New York City, you'll see every once in a while a window just full of plants. Someone's got house plants there, and you know the person living there is about 80 years old, because that is what New York City old people do. Apparently, is they just hang out at home and water their plants, and then it just becomes a jungle. And it's happening to me too, man. It's happening to me too. I don't know. So yeah, I think we're just getting older. Anyway,
that makes sense to me. I could buy that.
So let me ask you this. We are already out of time, but I do want to ask you one question, because I'm very familiar with the process of building a website in terms of, hey, we're going to do strategy, we're going to do wireframes, we're going to do mock-ups. And then when we have a bunch of mock-ups and we understand what we're doing, we have the architecture, then we're going to build something and we're going to test it. That's pretty well done. Known. I'm sure you guys have your own process for doing that. We have a process for doing that. Every agency that does websites has a process for doing that. What is the process for designing an office space? Do you have wireframes? I mean, you're an architect, so you probably have. How do you do this?
Well, look, I think there's the processes are surprisingly similar. I use the analogy very often with clients when they're talking about a website and explaining why you would have to do a sitemap and then why you would do wireframes and I use the analogy of architecture very often, but I probably extend it a bit to the point of just that you can have a new home or a new room built, but it's not until you live in it that you really understand what works and what doesn't work. And so we probably take the same attitude to websites and always think about the end point of a website not being the day that it's launched, but perhaps a little bit beyond that. Now, obviously, it's a luxury in terms of clients being able to afford that, but it is a better way to think about it. But I think your question was to do with the similarities. I see them as very similar. You go through the same process of, at least in my mind, of a concept which talks about the tonality of what it is that you're going to do, whether it's a website or building. You would go through some initial concept sketches, which probably somewhere between the development of look and feel and an initial approach to the wireframe, to the sitemap. And I always talk about this being engineering and architectural drawings, which is what you'd need before you start building anything. And I think visualization, we would always try to, again, it's a luxury that not every client has access to, but we would prototype out every part of the design in the same way you would with a building. So we were trying to visualize and minimize the unexpected elements that happen when somebody walks into a room and says, "Oh, that they've seen for the first time. I wasn't expecting it to be so tall." Or visit a website and say, "Oh, I wasn't expecting it to feel like that or look like that." So we try to do that as well. But I think the process is very similar, and I think the point with both of them is, I'm really out of practice as an architect, and I know nothing about code in America, and I don't understand, the contractual mechanisms. Although I'm interested in how all that works, and I'd say the same with websites. We always work with experts like yourselves to actually build the website, to make it happen, to actually understand what it takes, under the skin to make everything work and function and the way that it needs to, whether it's a website or building. So I think it is about partnership. I think that's, again, probably part of the way that we like to work. We worked with Spencer with a partner. They had an architectural firm, they had a contractor, And I think we had the easy bit. I always say it's the easy bit. We're just pushing around, the pretty pictures and the bits of furniture, and somebody else has to go and, same with building websites. Somebody else has to go and actually work out how to make that damn thing happen somehow. So I think it's a really good question, because the similarity between the two, at least in my mind, and I maybe we've been doing something wrong. I'm not sure with websites, but that's the way I think about it.
Yeah, no, I think you're right too. We come to think of it, you mentioned this, but you're right. I often will describe the process of at least the planning and design process as similar to, hey, we're going to build a house. We don't want to just build it first.
Right.
We're figuring out what we're building first. We're taking the risk of it down by trying these little pieces before we actually effectuate the entire thing. So yeah, I guess I do use the same. Even the word wireframe is often referred to as a blueprint, which is a construction doc. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
But the other thing with it is getting, and I would say that I would say this to any client, just the key parts of this that you need experts for, who earn their money and earn their keep and earn the value in what they do. And that is, for me, is particularly when you're building a website, is having, or the client wouldn't dream of doing the install of an office themselves. And I think it's the same with the website. You should. It's worth getting folks in who know how to do this efficiently at the right times. There's no. I don't think there's any way around that in my mind.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's still not a DIY thing.
Yeah, no.
Building an office or building a website. Okay, listen, this has been so good and so much fun to talk to you. My last question is just, if people want to find out more about you, about WONDERSPHERE, about what you do, where can they go? Where can they reach out to you?
Probably the best place is the website. So our website is pretty up to date. There we go, WONDERSPHERE.com. That's probably the best way to get a hold of us.
Okay. By the way, great name. You probably get this all the time. WONDERSPHERE. Awesome. How did that? Okay. My real last question is, how did you come up with the name?
I don't know whether to answer this honestly or not. We spend all our time coming up with names and brands for clients. And of all the names and brands that we've ever come up with, WONDERSPHERE is the one I like least. I really dislike the name.
What?
I get so many people who say they like the name, and it makes me really uncomfortable, because I just never have liked it. But it's one of those things you live with.
Wow, that is fascinating. I kind of love that answer. That is fascinating. What is it? What is it you don't like about it? Or you don't know? You just have a weird feeling about it.
It just feels so clunky. I like things to be more direct and clearer and clearer to articulate. But the story with it was, when I started, I was on the spot, and I had to think of something literally at the moment, like in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
We've got to get this done because we need to do this, and this has to be registered. And it was just, all right, it's going to be this. And
that is great.
And every single year, literally, actually, I've probably stopped in the last 5 years. I always go, is it too late to change it?
Yes. Oh my God. Well, dude, if you change it, I'm taking it, because that is great. I mean, our name is terrible. Our name is BFC Digital, because my name, it used to be called Ben Freda Consulting, BFC, because that's my name, which is the worst name for a company ever. My name. I don't even do most of the work anymore. You know what I mean? It doesn't have much to do with me. I mean, it a little bit, but it has much more to do with the other people here and all that kind of stuff. So I hate that it's my initials. It's the worst. So,
but you see, this is an interesting conversation, because we have this a lot with clients. It is about the name, and it isn't about the name. It's obviously about what you stand for and the values and right. And I think that all becomes that's all secondary. I really do think that
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that much.
If clients come to us and they say they want to spend a lot of time doing names, I tend to switch off a bit, because I think they're spending time and money in the wrong places. That actually where you should be focused is somewhere slightly different.
Totally. I mean, people know you as WONDERSPHERE, though, you know, and that works. It's a name, it's a moniker, it means something. Just leave it.
I'm going to give you the same advice right back at you, because, you know, a BFC, it stands for something very different. If you haven't told me, of course it's your initials, I know that, but it stands for the conversation that we had today, and that's very different to, you know, three-letter acronym. So that's more important.
Thank you. That's funny. It's just that I do the same thing. I think I should change this. We should change this, and then I forget. Don't worry about it. Listen, I really appreciate you coming on. This has been so much fun. WONDERSPHERE.com, or if you're in the UK, WONDERSPHERE.co.uk. Although I imagine it will direct you to the right place no matter where you go. And thanks again. I really appreciate it.
Ben, thank you. It's absolute pleasure. I enjoyed every bit of the conversation and the pre-conversation before we started recording. So I'm really, really delighted to have had the conversation with you today.
Excellent. Thanks again.
Thanks for listening to the Nonprofit Thrive podcast. We'll see you next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.